In our last video, we went through how Bones, an ExpressionEngine add-on, can be used to help empower your users by you creating a fully functioning JavaScript front end with one piece of template code. Today, we're going to take a deeper dive into how to use Bones to actually be completely headless. And by headless, we mean there is no display that's necessary. You don't need any line of template code, maybe besides your API code that we went through last time. But if you really wanted to, you can have your ExpressionEngine backend completely abstracted from what your users see on the front end. And we're going to do that today by creating a static site, a static blog site, using a package called Jigsaw by Titan. So which is powered by Laravel underneath, but we're going to use ExpressionEngine and Bones to manage all of the data, to pull in all of our pages, and to make sure that we've got a pretty seamless user experience. So let's have some fun. Let's build that out. Okay, the first thing we're going to do here is just start from the Jigsaw documentation. We're going to create our static site using this package, Jigsaw by Titan, built on top of Laravel, just a really elegant way to generate a quick static site. And we're going to use our EE Pro that we went through in our last video, our API here, to give us all of the data that we're looking for to build that out. So the first thing we need to do, we need to make our directory, and we need to install Jigsaw. So I'm going to make directory Bones blog. I'm going to cd into Bones blog. And then we run our composer commands to install Jigsaw. Great. And then we're going to start with just a bare bones Jigsaw project. They do have some starter packs, but I have a front end that's already kind of built for this, so I'm just going to do that. And then the next thing we need to do is run Npm Install and Npm Run Watch. And that's just how we build the site and how it will live reload in the browser here. So while we're doing that, let's take a minute, because that's going to take a bit of time. Let's take a minute and get the API URL that we want here. So if you went through our last example, you know that we did our API call with our API key right there in the URL. We actually displayed it on the test site, which is great. If you're using this for same site kind of data feed for a search, you want to load products dynamically from, CartThrob, something like that, this is a great way to do it. If you are calling a cross-site or you're trying to get data from somewhere else, revealing an API key can be pretty dangerous. And then two, if you're building out something like a static site, having all of this exposed to your front-end user may not be the greatest experience. So what we're going to do is actually call our API from the back end and then have that give us all of the data that we want and feed it right into Jigsaw. So, and it looks like Jigsaw is done building our site. So let's grab our URL real quick. We want to just grab blogs, channel equals blog. And just like last time, we want our SEO title not to be empty. So I'm going to actually load that URL. And there, that gives us our 8 entries. Let's go to here, and let's actually open our text editor. We're going to save that URL, and then let's actually save the template code here. What's returned in the API call, just so we can refer back to that as we build out our templates. So Jigsaw, when you're building it out, comes everything here in the source folder. It's all built on top of Laravel Blade, the templating engine. Very simple, elegant way. Very familiar to how EE actually does things. So right here, it's just extending our layout. And then this is our primary content section right now. All it's displaying is hello world. If we go to our layout, then we can actually see we're getting our scripts in. These are getting called from this underscore assets folder. And then here's where we're actually yielding the body. So very similar to Expression Engine layouts, this would be your content tag right here. All right. So since I'm going to be lazy about this, I'm going to pull in the front end that I've already built for this. So let's grab that from right here. Whoopsie doodle. There we go. Close that. And I'm just going to grab all of this and pull this into Bones blogs here, source. And we're just going to overwrite everything. And this is primarily just because, let's reload all our files. There we go. And now let's take a look at our site. Great. We've got a simple little front end that's just going to display our blogs built on top of Tailwind CSS. So just displaying very simply a title and some cards. Just one card for right now. But let's actually take a look inside of Jigsaw. Again, Jigsaw is built on Laravel. So it makes use of Laravel's collections here. Very similar to how ExpressionEngine does collections. Collections are just a group of similar data all thrown together so that you can manipulate it in a number of different ways, which is really nice. We're going to make use of Jigsaw's collections by this remote collection. So if we go to the remote collections documentation, all of our posts are going to be built here in our collection. So if I just take this portion of the documentation by way of example, I'm going to throw this here, make this pretty. There we go. I feel like I'm missing one, aren't I? Nope. I'm just too far over, aren't I? Yep. There we go. All right. There we go. Let's make sure we're building. Yep. Oh, and we're just going to use, instead of our layouts post here, we're going to use our layouts main. And that will make things much easier for us. Now, if we go here, nothing has changed because we haven't added our template. So these collections are available to your blade files by way of variables. So for here, I'm going to use Laravel blades for else. Posts as post, which is the same as a for each statement, just if it's empty, you can do something else. Let's just say, I'll steal this. And then let's do end for else. We'll change this to say no blog entries found. And then if I just save this as is, it'll reload. There we go, and now shows us our two cards. And in here, I'm going to actually change this to post content and post content. So then if I go back to our index file, and here I just say post title, and then here post content. Save. And now we have our data coming in. That's great. What we want to be able to do is actually pull that in from an API. We don't want to have that static in our config file. We want to say, reach out to the API whenever I regenerate my static site and get me that data. So let's scroll down, fetching collection items from a remote API. We're just going to pull the same content here. And I'll walk us through this. So this will get rid of our array, and this is actually going to be a closure function. Config. There we go. There's our function. And let's throw all of this in to the function. Right. Make sure this is evenly spaced. There we go. And we're going to change this to post content. So what this is going to do, instead of just using a PHP array to give us that data, is that this will actually do a file get contents on this URL. So let's take a look what's there. Yep, pretty straightforward JSON, and just pulling in title and body, user ID and ID, and a whole lot of them. And then all it does is run the collect helper, maps out the functions, and returns our array that will match the content that we want to see inside of our Blade template. So we have our title and our post content. So I'm going to save this, and let's watch it reload. And there is our many, 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 many entries. Fantastic. All right. Now that's great if we wanted to get this site. We don't want to get this site. What we want to do is actually pull this in to our Blade function via this. So let's take a look at what that's going to look like here. Let's see here. Great. So we want to get our URL. So this is the URL that we used from our example last time. So this has our API key that we temporarily have protected. If you wanted to use Laravel's environment helpers, I believe you can do that inside of Jigsaw. If not, it's super easy to add. So you can add that to an environment file and keep that out of your code base entirely. And then we have our blog channel, and we have our search saying that the SEO title is not empty. Awesome. So now, if we just wanted to say, I'm just going to get rid of this for now, make that blank string. That should pull in our posts. But we are going to break everything because our API doesn't match that exactly. So we want to get everything off of the data object. So let's do that now. We'll say data equals posts data. Watch it reload. And now we have our titles coming straight in from our ExpressionEngine site. And so now if we wanted to, we can actually go through and get all of the rest of the data here. So we could say that that read more should be the URL title. So let's add the URL title. URL title equals post URL title. And save that in the config. And then on our read more, where's our link here? Let's move that closer to the front. We'll say blog / post URL title. Save that. And let's watch it reload. And now when we hover over it, we can see this is / the hip one. This is / a photograph for the ages, / marrow and the broken bones. So there are we can pull in all sorts of information here. If we wanted to truncate some of it, let's see what we can grab in blog content if we wanted to as our post content, and we'll add that here. All right, so our blog content is coming in as actual HTML. So if we just run that and save that as is, that will actually display the tags there, and we definitely don't want that. So inside of our index file, what we want, we're going to change this to use the curly bracket exclamation point notation, and what that does is that parses that as raw HTML. There we go, much nicer. And so now we have our blog listing coming straight from Bones. And this is fully headless. So if we look at what's in the actual files here, so in our build local, go to our index, and all this has done is created our HTML. And so our whole site is right here. So in theory, if I wanted to, I could throw this build local. Actually, I can show you right now. Let's actually try it. So let's go into build local, and let's just run a local PHP server, localhost, We'll run it at port 8005. Localhost, and we'll run that at port 8005. And there's our site. And this is just raw HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, all pulling from Bones. So that when an entry is updated, if we wanted to rebuild that, all we'd have to do is rerun our build commands here, and we'd be able to see that. So let's take a look at what it would take to actually build out an entry. All right, so now let's actually start creating our blog entry here. So we have our API call, we have our post. What we want to do, and I've just created a generic placeholder post layout. We want to point that to our layout inside of the config. So underscore layouts.post. And then what that's going to do is then rerun the build process, create this post folder based on the data it finds, and then add in all of the data that we need. So if I go back to our templates, let's go actually to our index file. The other thing I did here was add the index to get the folder name and then just change the URL that's posting to. So if we look here, I can see I can click on post 1. And it comes to our placeholder page. So now let's actually show our data here. So this is our index. Let's close that. So we have our title file. And let's do this. Let's find our blog. Let us pull in. So when pulling in through a page, use the page variable. And so let's pull in our page URL title. Actually, we'll do our page title here for the breadcrumb. And we'll do the same thing down here, page title. Let's refresh and let's take a look. And there we go. All right, and so I can do the same thing with my content down here, just like we did on the front page, but I'm going to use the curly bracket exclamation point syntax here, post content. All right, let's let that reload. And now we have our beautiful content coming in. Great. And now we have these other fields. We have author and entry date. So let's actually add those in here. So if I want to see author, let's just say for now I'll use the username. So right here. So let's do author equals post username. So we'll save that in our config, and then in our post here, we'll add that in, page author. We'll let that refresh and rebuild, and there it is. And now let's also grab in the proper dates. So Bones sends in dates in a couple different formats just to make things as close to easy as possible for you. So let's say I want to grab the entry date, and I want the pretty date. So we'll say date, we'll say entry date equals post, whoops, entry date, pretty date. All right, and then save it here, and then let's grab that for our template. Page. And okay, we added that to our template, and now we have our pretty, not so pretty date. So let's say we wanted to change the format of this just to make things easier. Again, because this is built on Laravel, that comes really easy. We'll just use entry date equals, we'll use the carbon class that's included in Laravel, parse, and we'll grab our post entry date pretty date. And then instead of using that, we'll use this, and we'll just say format. Just because I'm bad with date formats, I remember YMD. Let's use that. We'll let it rebuild. It'll loop through to create our HTML, and there is our date. Now what's great is because we have so many other fields here inside of our blog entries, we can go through and add all sorts of things. We can actually create our whole site just using a fluid field. And all of that just gets stored into raw HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Super easy for you to upload anywhere, super easy for you to build. And that is Headless EE used to build a static site in Jigsaw. What's great about building a site this way is it takes a lot of the complexity out of it. So if you wanted to, you could build all of your data on the EE side. You can build your HTML, CSS on another side, and then anytime something gets pushed, you just rebuild it, ship it off, and you've got a new blog entry. And it actually allows you to abstract all of your data from the actual view layer in a really, really fancy way. So if you wanted to, you could host your whole EE site on GitHub Pages, or set up a Vercel site or a Netlify site and just dump all your files on there and use Bones to power your data. So whatever questions you have about going headless with EE and Bones, we're here to help, and happy developing.